All right. All right. So Stuart, thanks very much for coming on. It's nice to have you here on the webinar with us. Just to give the folks a bit of background, Stuart and I were born a day apart nearly 40 years ago, spent time together in primary school, and it seems many, many moons since you wrote me in to help picking a team for the Kennedy House team in Everington Primary School, and ended up at secondary school together before Stuart headed across the water then to play at Preston. So maybe that brings us on to our first question nicely. So when you were a young player, both, maybe at that sort of 10, 11, 12, up to when you left Northern Ireland, what were your coaches doing locally, and maybe when you were involved with other groups that came into the country, that helped you prepare for elite level football as a player, both in Northern Ireland and then when you went across the water?
To be honest with you, I was really fortunate in the clubs I've been at. When I was like 10, 11, I went to like a local team in Derry called Oxford, who I believed at the time were the best boys club in the area. I was sort of looked after big style. I was like from the other side of the town, from where Oxford were situated. They took me under their wing. And they were the best boys club. They had a real good young side, but we trained. It was dedicated. People were in Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday mornings. And I just loved it. The whole thing of playing football and being out in the street with your friends and family was okay, but then once you got the football club where you felt wanted and you were pushed and you were amongst all our young lads who had sort of had the same desire to play at the highest level, that was a real good establishment, or a good setting for me to start off with. Coaching wise, they were all local fathers and stuff like that who were helping out. There was no academy directors or anything like that there, as clubs would have now, but it was young fathers who had their kids at the club, and they put their time, their effort, and they were great. Going on from there, then I got the opportunity to go up to St Andrews. I made county teams and stuff like that, and I done okay. And St Andrews were the best football club, boys football club in Northern Ireland at the time, and I was fortunate enough to be asked to go up there. So that was a big reality check then. My team at that age group was basically eight internationals in it. That was just phenomenal, and I knew I had to step up my game basically if I wanted to be a professional footballer, because I realised that I wasn't at the level they were at. So it was a lot of dedication. A lot of coaches were, to a different degree, most of them were working as like clubs across the water as well. You know what I mean? So the intensity of training was totally different to what I was used to, and I had to be dedicated. I was going to Belfast probably 2-3 nights a week. You know what I mean? Between being lucky enough getting in the Northern Ireland team and training with my club on the Saturdays and playing matches in the Lisbon League on Saturday morning. So I was travelling up and down the road quite often. But the whole thing, I'd say the intensity of training, the older I got before I went to England, sort of set me up for when I hit England. And especially in the last few years of St Andrews, where everything was as professional as it could be in Northern Ireland at that time.
So it sounds like both when you started at Oxford and then when you moved to St Andrews, the intensity, was that fueled by competition within the players themselves to push to a higher level? And then how, in that environment, did the coaches encourage that and stoke the fire within you?
Yeah, I really get that. Yeah, just the competition for places at St Andrews was phenomenal. Like the front three were 3 full internationals, and I was like, who became 3 full internationals, and I was sort of the other one. You know what I mean? So coaching wise, you had your intensity training as if you were in team, but you were totally separated, i.e. forward players were together, and that's when you were getting your 1-to-1 individual training with, i.e. a coach, 2 or 3 coaches club. You were getting your 1-to-1 training, and you notice the difference where it doesn't sound great, but when I was at Oxford, or I was playing county level at Derry or Londonderry, compared to what I was at when I was going to St Andrews in Belfast, where you were getting your individual training, but you knew you had to be at a level to get in the team, in a club team on a Saturday, never mind the international team. And the international matches. But the 1-to-1 training, the separation, like I never ever done that when I was in Derry. I never had separated training. I was always as a group, and I was always sort of one of the better individuals where you were sort of just all together and you all clumped together and you're doing your normal team training, whereas you were sort of given individual programs. You were set up totally to try and progress to make you a professional footballer, and everybody at that club wanted to be a professional footballer, whereas people in Derry were there just for the fun and the enjoyment, and just they turn up on a Saturday and get a game of football, whereas the boys of St Andrews all want to be professional footballers and be at the highest level.
So I'm interested in that individual development program. Perhaps that was maybe ahead of its time, because it's such a common phrase now in youth coaching. The coaches obviously would have seen areas in your game, your strengths, and where they thought you needed to improve. But how much of a role did you get to play yourself in identifying those areas to work on?
I knew straight away I wasn't strong enough. I was small, I was weak. I was very, very quick. I was very tricky. I was a winger. I was direct, but I knew big development, especially when you get to a level where you're playing against bigger, stronger, more physical players playing at a higher level who are more professional. I knew I needed to work on strength, and I knew that I had to go away and try and develop my strength and develop my core a lot bigger than what I was, because I was 6 stone wet, let's be honest with you. But you wouldn't know that now. But back then I was so skinny and weak, but maybe that was back then. Maybe that was a good thing, because my pace was getting me out of situations where I wouldn't get away with it now. You know what I mean? But I knew by especially going on trials and things when I was going to England, and I noticed the difference. And I just knew I had to work on it, and it was a big thing when I came back home, and that I had to get bigger and stronger. I'm not saying I had to be massive, but I was so small and weak, you know what I mean, where I had to develop that. And that was my big thing when I was 15, going across the water.
That's interesting, because it's from your experiences of going to trials at other clubs, you were obviously identifying parts of your game if you wanted to then move to that level. But it was kind of a collaboration between you and your coaches at St Andrews for what you needed. So it wasn't them leading it, it wasn't you leading it, it was somewhere in the middle of the two. I've always taken care of my own development. I've always known. I think a lot of young lads now today have to be fed. No, they have to be led everything. Where I was totally different. I knew what my strengths and my weaknesses were. I knew where I wanted to develop. I knew where I wanted to go, and an end goal, I want to be a professional footballer in England. I knew if I had to get there, what I had to develop, and I've always taken an interest in that. Whereas now, I think a lot of young lads are wanting 1-to-1 training, wanting everything done for them, wanting coaches to do everything, to be like another father figure for them. Whereas I was opposite that. I had a dad who cared, who played football, who showed a real interest, and he took me to Belfast a load of days a week and gave me everything. But I always had an interest in my own development and how I could get better. And I think young lads now aren't like that. I think the majority of them are totally different, where they need fed, or they want to do their 1-to-1s all the time, and it's a lot of hard work. But I think the best footballers are the best people who make careers out of it, are people who make their own development choices and how they can improve themselves without being told what they need to do. I'm glad you brought your family up there, because I guess that sort of led into part of this question. It was like the perfect trifecta, really, for you, was it? You had your own motivations, but you had a great environment and support system from your family, and then for Northern Ireland especially, a high-level club environment. So those three things together, do you think that was the key then to helping you make the next step?
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you an example of my family figures. I went to Northern Ireland trials at 14 to play in the schoolboys, which was a year above. But at the time in Derry, I was sort of treated as if I was a decent enough player to go and trial for that. I didn't get in the squad, and I was devastated. And I remember the car journey down to my father from the whole way from Belfast. I remember times I've played bad and my dad would go through me like a ton of bricks, you know what I mean? But my dad was like an Irish League player, you know, and he done okay. And I remember coming home at 14 from that trial at Northern Ireland and not making the squad. And I knew then that I had to improve big style. Me and my father had a long 90-mile drive back to Derry. And listen, I was devastated. I was a kid. I was devastated. But that car journey still sticks to me to this day. What was said in that car. My dad pushed me. He did push me. He pushed me a lot. But I wanted it.
Yeah.
And if I wanted it, if I didn't want it, I don't think my dad would have pushed me the way he did. You know what I mean? And he knew how much I wanted to be a professional footballer. And that car journey, I'm now nearly 40, as you said earlier, Gary. But
it's a state of mind.
That car journey still sticks to me to this day. What was said in that car, and I can't repeat it on a podcast or whatever.
So to move on then, what sacrifices did you have to make at a young age to allow you to pursue those next steps? And who supported you then to build on what you've said about your family and allowing you to make some of those sacrifices in your life?
Hey, listen,
Can I pause? I'm really sorry. I'm going to pause it 1 second. There's a massive sacrifices did you have to make as a young player, and how did the support structure around you help you make those sacrifices?
Like when you're on about as a 13, 14-year-old lad in Northern Ireland, there's lots of outside interest, put it that way. Growing up in council estates and things like that, there, no, it's not really suited for wanting to be a professional footballer. But as I said, I was travelling to Belfast for club football Tuesday, Thursdays. I was training in Northern Ireland a day a week. I was playing matches in Lisburn on a Saturday. My mum and dad, we didn't have much, you know what I mean? But we're travelling 4 days a week to the other side of the country. I was training with county teams in the middle of that. Listen, there's a lot of things now go on about people not are playing too many matches or training too much. But see, when I was 14, 15, 16, I was training every day. I'm playing, maybe Sunday I was out with family or whatever, but every single day I was either training or playing. My social life, they were probably doing things they shouldn't have been doing, but I wasn't doing it, you know what I mean? And that didn't happen until I went to England, you know what I mean? I didn't have a beer until I went to England. Well, definitely most of it, to be honest with you. I was totally dedicated, but I knew where I wanted to get to, and it reaped the rewards in the end up. And maybe my father had a close eye on me, put it that way. But there was an end goal that I wanted to get to, and nothing was going to stop me, put it that way. Schoolwork, I could have done a lot better in school. I done okay, mind you know what I mean? I done okay, but I could have done a lot better. But as I said, once school finished, I came home, I was straight out playing football, and that was me constantly. And other things. I done my exams, most of my exams when I was away and stuff, as you probably know. And that was it. No, there's nothing was going to stop me being where I wanted to get to, and I just had the drive to get there.
Yeah. So when you moved from Oxford to St Andrews was obviously a big step. When you went for trials at different clubs and then moved to Preston on your first big move, what was the biggest difference in the coaching that you noticed or you felt?
At Preston?
Yeah.
Everybody at that football club was geared to do better. We weren't good enough. I went in trials to other clubs, a lot bigger clubs, but Preston, I had the family feel at Preston, and they sort of had the whole mentality. The whole mentality of the football club was to get the highest level they could get at, and I thought that was my best opportunity or best place I could go to. I got offered better contracts at other clubs who were a lot more recognisable than what Preston were at the time, but Preston had a real work ethic where everybody from top to bottom wanted to get better, and I thought that was my best opportunity for me to play senior football at the earliest opportunity. It wasn't big, it wasn't pretty. No, it was a real local sort of club. It didn't have a big fancy stadium it has now. But they had an assistant manager in Davy Moyes who has an interest in Northern Ireland people because his mother's from Korean, and he made a real big effort, and that just sold it to me. It really did, and it was the whole desire to get the club better and improve and get through the leagues was the whole interest of what I wanted to be at. And when I got there on my trials, you felt wanted. I felt a lot more wanted there than I did anywhere else, and that's what sold it to me. Coaching wise, I had when I first went over as a youth team manager. I had a youth team manager called trying to think of what Neil McDonald. He used to be at Newcastle and Everton. He's my youth team coach, and he used to play at the highest level. And he was a young coach, a young ex-professional who, sort of like myself now, where he had a real interest in doing better and bringing the lads on and trying to develop the lads. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it was, honestly, he has training, and he was an ex-pro who could still play. And his whole training, his whole tempo training, his whole how he wanted the clubs to progress and get the players into the first team was really, really, just really sold to me.
So it sounds like Preston gave you a really nice balance between a social support structure mixed with the right quality of coaching to facilitate where you wanted to get to, and maybe more so than some of the other clubs.
With 100%. 100%. I'll name clubs like I was at Burnley, I was at Sheffield Wednesday, I was at Ipswich, who were all a lot more bigger and developed clubs. There was clubs offering me contracts who were Scottish Premier League champions at the time. But the whole family structure, everybody was in it together. We lived in digs there was like 13 young YTS lads, all lived in a B&B, and they all had the same goal. Don't get me wrong, we had our fun, we had our enjoyment. No, you can imagine 13 lads living together in a B&B. But they all went home at weekends, and people don't recognise the sacrifices people from Northern Ireland go away. There was me and another guy from Glengormley. He's still my best mate to this day. We were in that D&B on our own every weekend, where the rest of the lads were going home. Me and Morgs, but it was just one big family. You had real good coaches, all boys who were one day coach at the highest level and did. You had young lads who wanted to develop and get a professional career as quick as possible, who could have more than likely got the other bigger club, but wanted to be there for the right reasons. And the team was getting bigger and better. So the first team, the senior team, so it was all moving in the right direction. It was the biggest thing that sold it to me. And that's, as you say, everything. There was small pots between family, coaching, and young lads with the same desire. All three of them together was an ideal package for me. And financially, maybe not, but to be where I wanted to get to at that time, that's exactly what I needed.
So you've obviously mentioned the coach Neil McDonald there, and is there any other coaches that had a big impact on your career, and what specifically was it about them? And I'm curious, did you really notice that at the time, or is that something now as you've got older and are transitioning from player to coach yourself, that you reflect on those coaches when you were younger and think, there was something different about them, something better about them that impacted me in a positive way?
I still get stuck to this day about talking about Davy Moyes, right? Boys always slag me. Davy Moyes this, Davy Moyes that, right? But I'm telling you, David Moyes just was phenomenal. And people think about his Man United record or whatever, right? He was on his West Ham record now or whatever. But he was phenomenal. He was coming to his end of his time as a professional footballer. I'll give you a quick background on him, right? He was 17. He made his debut he played against Juventus for Celtic at 17. So he was a decent young footballer. When he got older, he wasn't good enough. He became slow, and he realised that, and he went and done his coaching badges really early, and he wanted to be a coach. But see what I took from Davy Moyes, his work ethic. He was at the club, first person at the club, last person to leave. He had an interest in every single player. May it be like an academy player who's 9 years of age, the reserve team player, i.e. me or whatever, the first team, he wanted to improve every single player. And he'd done his team training, he'd done his coaching training, he became manager, he'd done all the training himself, he'd done all the scouting, he'd done everything, the development of the whole club. He wanted to improve everything. And his work ethic was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And that's something I take on now. I know I'm in a small club now, but the way I seen him work to get where he wanted to be is exactly what I've took on now. And I think his determination to be the best and improve everything at his football club. I remember, and maybe at the time you're sick of him because you were going out, you were training with your team in the morning. You may have done an hour in the afternoon, and then he'd have you out doing one-to-one training in the afternoon, crossing balls constantly, working on your weaker foot, beating men, 1v1 training, 2v2 training. He had you out again in the afternoon, and you were like, any chance of getting home? You were right, doing like 3 sessions a day, but it was only to better me.
Yeah.
And then at night time, then he would go and scout, or he'd go and watch another game, or he would go and speak to the club or whatever. And he was never ever away from a football club. And it just stuck with me. And I just thought to myself, like, when I knew I was always going to stay in football. I didn't know I wanted to be a manager at the time, whatever, but I knew when I moved on or when I finished playing that I was going to follow that lead, sort of, and I was going to do everything I can to make wherever I am at that time better. And that's what I took from Moyes, and it's still stick to today.
So that's obviously formed a big part of your coaching personality, maybe.
Yeah.
As you moved then on from Preston and had a few other clubs across the water, and then when you came back to Linfield in the Irish League, are there any other coaches in different environments that have influenced you in a different way and helps alter your coaching personality?
Big Davy Gervie. Man management, just I wouldn't say now he was the best coach in the world. No, and he probably first admit that. You had other people who worked with him who were a lot better. And I don't hope it doesn't mind me saying this. No, a lot better coaching coaches. But he had the right people with him. But as man management, me now as a manager, as a young coach, his man management with young players particularly was second to none. No, you were going out the games Saturdays and you'd break down and break walls for him, and that's just what you would do. He would do anything in his bar. He always talked about family. And once you're part of his Linfield family, that was you. You're part of the family, and you were scared to let him down or let the family down. And his whole motto the whole way through was the family, and we still have it. And that changed when I was in Linfield. We had 30 lads, say, over that 5-6 years I was there, and we're still in the same WhatsApp group. We're still pals. We still back each other up. We still socialise together all the time. And that's awesome, and that's including Big Davy and his staff, Brian and stuff like that. It's just a family, and that's probably the opposite side to Moisey, whereas Moisey was more hands-on. He'd done the coaching and he'd done the setup. Everything was set up at the time he got there. Davy was more like a man manager, where he was totally opposite to David. But the two things, I try to keep the two things now with me, where I bring both styles into me, where I'm doing now, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you mentioned before that you were fortunate, and maybe that's a good example of it. You were fortunate enough to come across one of them early in their career when they were more of a coach, and fortunate then to come across the other one when they were a manager, and maybe allowed you to see the difference between the two roles and how you could marry them up as you moved into coaching yourself.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate. I talk about the word fortunate. I've been really fortunate where I've had quite a few clubs, you know what I mean? And I've had loads of managers, and like there's loads of managers who I could say I wouldn't do anything they have done.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name them because I don't want to embarrass them. But there's other coaches where I could take bits and pieces where, like Tommy Riggs, another one who I look up to and I'm still friendly with, where there's loads of things where I could take from him and his experience and his I'm trying to think of the correct words. Like what he had was he had lots of contacts all around UK where he could go to, or he was looked up to in certain circles, and I knew I had to build my contacts in football. That's something I took from Tommy. You know, build my contacts in football, because you never know when you need them, or you never know what opportunities come up. And doing my coaching badges and things like that is a really good place where I built up my contracts from Tommy. That's a good thing. It's bad things from managers who lying and not being truthful and honest and going behind your back, and there's managers I've played under like that, and who just want you to kick people and stuff like that. And that's there's some really successful Irish League managers who I'm talking about here. It just does not work, and well, it's not going to be part of me anyway, and I'm not going to take it on. But I suppose that's the joys of football, and the joys of having different managers and working under other people and different clubs and stuff. And that's lots of things I can take forward.
It's interesting, because the next question I was going to ask you, when you came back to the Irish League, what were the biggest differences in the coaching that you experienced? And then when you look back at experiences across all your clubs that you've mentioned, has that really helped form your coaching identity or philosophy? And especially there, you've talked about things that you liked and things that you didn't like, things that you want to use from coaches, and you think there's certain things, there's not a chance I would use those. So how did that cauldron sort of come together to help form your coaching identity?
I first came back, and you this is what I say to every young lad now who comes back from England as a professional footballer. It's a reality check. It is a massive reality check. So I went from being a young 22-year-old professional footballer in England who was earning decent, not massive money, but earning decent money, to coming back, signing for Linfield, part-time, totally different training, not out every morning, not out twice a day, training twice a week. And some weeks Davey would give you a day off because you're traveling there. It was totally off. Chalk and cheese. That's the way it was. And I came back, I didn't have a job. No, I had to find a job, part-time job. I just tried to keep my mat on, where I was training in the morning myself, training in the afternoon myself, and it got demoralising. It really did when you're training. And there was no one in Northern Ireland in Derry at that time had the same mentality or desire to go and train all the time. You know, they were either working or at school or whatever. And then you talk about my philosophy in coaching. I had to try and make everything as professional. Now, what I do now is try and make everything as professional as what I can. My club's a small club, what I'm working at now, but I try and make it as professional and as much as it was in England as I can. And yes, they all have all their interests. Yeah, they all have jobs. They all have careers. They all, like, I have boys who are at school. I have boys who are lawyers. I have boys who are sports coaches. I have boys who do coaching as a full-time job. But I have boys who own businesses. They all have totally different things, but they all want to be at a football club where they could all earn more money elsewhere. Let's be honest about it. But they want to be somewhere where they're professional, they're treated right. And honesty is a massive thing in my club, and it's a massive thing to me. And I found when I came back home that, and I'm not talking about Linfield here, by the way, when I left Linfield and went to smaller clubs, that factor wasn't there. And I always said that I will always be 100% honest with everybody that I deal with. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's people don't want to hear it. I think that's a good thing to talk about when we're talking about coaching. A lot of people's heads full of nonsense, including followers. And sometimes the big difference now is that some young lads don't want to hear the truth. Especially when they're younger. I think it's a different world now, the world I was in. I would always listen to what coaches had to say. Sometimes young lads don't want to listen anymore. But honestly, if you be honest with people and then they can't. You got to hold you to your word, and that's a big thing. That everybody comes to my football club now. That's the first thing I say to them. You're here, and I will always be honest with you, and I will make you better, or I will develop you and make you a better player. Philosophy, I don't really know. I always want to be better. I always want the club to progress. But the philosophy is just winning football matches and getting the best we can get to. Sometimes it doesn't work, don't get me wrong, but always try and progress. If that means me being manager of a football club, progressing young lads at 9 years of age and our junior setup, to me getting young lads into my first team, doing the best they can, that's it. But as a manager, some managers at my level wouldn't show an interest in 9-year-olds. I do. I love it. I just love developing and trying to get things better. And if it's a 9-year-old lad on a Saturday morning playing at 9 o'clock in the morning, or if it's my senior lads playing a cup final on Boxing Day, then that's my job as a whole as manager of the football club.
So would it be right in saying you've tried to marry the professional experience you had as a player in England and Scotland and adjusted that for the culture of Northern Ireland football, and in particular that it's part-time football?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. I think the best footballers, the best people who have made careers out in Northern Ireland, I've got lots of examples. I'll give you an example myself, and then I'll talk about somebody else here. I came back, and I first went to Linfield. After 6 months, I got fed up traveling. I made the conscious decision that I had to move to Belfast. I moved to Belfast, stopped the traveling, and then I went and trained with the youth team on a Monday night and done extra, as well as my Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? It mightn't sound much, okay? But leading from that, my game improved. My game improved. Just between first 6 months having the reality check come back from England. See, the second year when I was at Linfield, my game improved. Big stay, tenfold. And Big Davy made the point then, because I was in on the Monday night, some of the boys didn't like it. They were all in the Monday night. And then within a year after that, then Linfield took eight lads professionally. Some of the lads got professional, and they were full-time again. Back. So full-time football was the development of young lads coming back, doing extra nights training, and then the progression of that then going into senior football. I'll give you another example. Garth McCauley. Garth McCauley's playing Irish League football. He's working and he's travelling and playing for Korea. He'd been released by Linfield. He left Crusaders, blah, blah, blah. He gave up his job. His normal 9-to-5 job for a year. They work constantly to try and improve as a young footballer. Within a year, he gets his move to Lincoln, and that's his career started. And I'm not telling people to go out and give up their jobs, don't get me wrong, but that shows you what he's achieved in football now, because he had a conscious decision that he had to get better. And the only way he can make it as a footballer or get a chance to go across the water would to be 100% dedicated and not lose 95. And that's what he gave it up for a year and reaped his rewards.
That was entirely worth it for the night I spent in Lyon as well.
No, I was there too. I still tortured him.
So then, as you started on your coaching pathway through the Irish FA, especially the B and A licenses, I'm curious about your thoughts on the pathway for current or ex-players or elite players as opposed to local coaches. I've experienced that on the B license, and I'm about to start on the A myself. And did you feel in a unique position, having had experience on both sides of that almost?
Yeah. I could have been fast-tracked. Obviously, being an ex-international or whatever in professional, I could have been fast-tracked. But I was still playing Irish League football at the time. I was at Larne. I was playing Captain of Larne or whatever. And I thought I had to learn and develop. So I could have jumped on my B license, straight on to my A, but I didn't want to do that. I went and done my level 1. People may laugh at this, right? So on Sundays, I think it was 5 Sundays or something, I was going and people were teaching me how to pass the ball. But I just thought I always had an interest in coaching. I always wanted to learn. But I was going and I was doing it. And I done my level 1 at Lurgan Town Football Club. I went and done my B license with all the lads from Northern Ireland, no local lads, in my first part of my B, which is a C licence or whatever it is now. And then I applied for my B licence. Now, I understand frustrations with local lads and people getting fast tracked. I'm gonna be 100% honest. I done my B licence with local lads who have to learn and develop like everybody else, like myself. But my first week of my A licence, and I was pulled into the elite group. I hadn't applied to be in the elite group because I went through the normal process of going from level 1, level 2, C, B1, B2. They put me in the elite group with the professional footballers. I done my 11v11 assessment. Then end of the second week or whatever it was, I had 11 internationals. I was coaching 11 internationals. Now, my very first session, we done a section on 4-3-3, and they put me play 2 teams. I'm an Everton fan. I was marking Stephen Pienaar. Literally within half an hour of me starting my A licence, marking Stephen Pienaar. I was like, my assessment, I had Roy, Carl, Garth, McCulley, Richard Dunn, Carvalho, Thiago, 2 Chilean internationals. That was my assessment. Like, I will never ever get that experience. I hope they do. Like, but when would I ever get an experience? Like Thiago's playing for Atletico Madrid, or assistant manager of Atletico Madrid at the time. Carvalho won everything. No, when am I ever going to get the opportunity to coach these guys ever again? Now, there was, and what I'll say about the split in the camp between the Northern Ireland lads and the international lads, the Northern Ireland lads could sit and watch and learn of the way they done it. And listen to me, they're normal guys. They're not the best coaches in the world. No, they're definitely not. In fact, some of the lads on the course who were from Northern Ireland were, in my opinion, were a lot better than what these internationals were. But I understand the reasons why these internationals come to Northern Ireland, because they want to develop and get jobs. You need your A licence now to get a decent job. So I understand the reasons why they come to Northern Ireland to get fast tracked, blah, blah, blah. It looks good in the AFA. Like, I'll give an example. Thiago, if he was going to do it in Portugal, he would have to be based in Portugal. They don't take outsiders. So he would have to be based in Portugal. That didn't suit him at the time because he's managing Atletico Madrid in Spain. So he had to go elsewhere. I enjoy, and listen, I built up contacts. I talk about contacts all around the world. I have contacts now all around the world because of that situation. I also have a lot more local contacts because I've done my up to my B licence, up the local coaches, and there's pros and cons to all of it. There's pros and cons to all of it. Like, there's a lot of people who I didn't know, and I know a lot of people in football in Northern Ireland who I didn't know when I was going through my badges, and now I do. And I think it's a real. You learn in your coaching badges, you learn how to develop as a coach, you learn certain points. But I think the biggest thing I got from my coaching was the contacts I made around the world and locally. I
think it's really interesting that you started the pathway as a local coach, and then as you went into your A, transitioned into an elite. I think my experience of the coaches is I always say it's the pros and the Joes on the course, but it's I think there's things that the Joes can learn from the pros, and I think there's things the pros can learn from the Joes. So 100%. If you had to maybe pick one thing that a local coach could learn from an ex-elite player transitioning into the coach, and one thing that the ex-elite player could learn from the local Joe coach, what would you pick as those two things?
Well, the difference between the local lads and the senior lads, or local lads and international lads, professionalism is the first one, without doubt. I was managing Banbridge Town when I was doing my A licence, right? And this is funny, right? Every single night when I'm sitting down having dinner, I had Thiago and Carvalho, Jermaine Jones, Pienaar, and they wanted to talk to me about Banbridge Town. They couldn't believe it. I was paying guys 20 quid expenses. And these guys, and there's boys there who are like earning hundreds of thousands of pounds, who are multi-millionaires, who at the most elite football clubs in the world, and they couldn't believe that I was a coach and I was taking them in their section. And I'm not saying I was better than any of them. I'm not ever going to say that. But what I will say, I was comfortable in the environment. I was able to coach them. They were able to, and they showed me respect. Whereas some young coaches in Northern Ireland don't have respect, don't have the professionalism to improve people. That might sound very harsh, all right? But it's not. It's my own honest experience. There is people here who want to improve people, who want to do better, who are professional or try to be as professional as they can. But there's ones that aren't, and that's the difference I've seen between the two groups. I had the professional side and the so-called level that wasn't where they were. You have to develop to get that level. There's boys in that group who were local lads who were more than capable of going coaching.
Sorry, one second. I'm going to let them in the door. Yeah. So it seemed there like the obvious thing to me was if you could see an improvement in local coaching, it would be to professionalize the environment, professionalize the attitude and behaviours of the coaches, but making it appropriate to our Northern Ireland culture and environment. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think, talk about my own club, we have kids from 8, 9 the whole way through. They're all fathers, they all work, they all whatever. I try my best to improve them. My whole mentality is to try and improve everything at the football club. So I would actively go and speak to them. I would actively go and try and improve them. I try and get them on their courses, trying to improve everything they do. If we could get, if I had a magic wand and I could get all my coaches to go and do their badges, do everything, it'd be ideal. Some of them don't have that desire. So what I've tried to do is get the young coaches in the football club who want to do it, who want to improve, who want to get the young lads better. As I said, I won't go back to the very start where I talked about being at Oxford and being a real good club and all and stuff. But then I seen the difference when I went to all our bigger boys clubs. That's what I'm trying to do at my club now. I'm trying to improve. I'm trying to get people in who are going to improve and move these young lads to the next level. And listen, because of my situation with the club I'm at, I know, and it's the same when I bring young players into my club, I know they'll have to move on. But that's the whole selling point. That, come to my football club, I'll improve you. Your training will improve. You'll improve as a player. And the end goal, then you go and get a professional move and then yourself a few quid and play at a higher level. That's the whole thing that goes from the bottom of my football club, from running from 9-year-old, hopefully in 9 years, hopefully in 6 years' time he's playing in my first team. Hopefully in 9 years, then he's playing at the highest level in the country. And that's the way it should be.
So it's interesting there that you talked a little bit about the youth end of it, and James and I obviously both involved with Institute, and we're trying to take a bit of a different pathway ourselves. And I'm curious that as someone who's both played and coached now in this country, if you were given the power to restructure youth football in Northern Ireland, what would that look like and why?
I would, people are going to laugh, right? I would love full-time academies. I would love it. I know Northern Ireland now have got an academy where they're now at Jordanstown, and the difference I find out is I would love it. I would love to run a football club like Preston. When I was a youth team player, I would love to be a Neil McDonald in Northern Ireland running 18 lads who want to be a professional footballer or want to play at the highest level, and I'm coaching them every single day, and they still have their schoolwork and stuff. And I know there's some of that going on, but the whole junior, you're talking about the whole junior, I would love it all just be all junior football they play on a Sunday morning. I know that I might rattle a few cages or whatever, okay, but the academies in England playing on Sunday because all the junior teams playing on Sunday, so that they can all go and watch the first team and learn on a Saturday, so they can all aspire to be watch Preston or be a Preston footballer, and then they go and play for Preston then on a Sunday morning. I would get young players to go and coach the academies then on a Sunday. And then I would get 16-year-olds then. I'd run academy at Linfield, I'd run academy at the senior clubs, full-time academies, where they would all, like, one institute, where the best 18 young lads at 16 who haven't went across the water are full-time at institute. And they would develop and they would get better and they get stronger, and you would see them playing at a higher level a lot earlier than what they're doing. And I would love to do that, and I would love one of them jobs.
Yeah.
But that's what I like. There's a, maybe talking out of school here, but there's a new college right beside my football ground now. At Preston, at Bridge, big campus, big massive campus. And if we can get something going between us and the campus, then that's ideal for my football club. And then get lads coming in, training and helping out around the football club and making it more professional. And then they're playing senior football instead of playing local football at 15, 16 years of age. So many benefits to it, and so many things that I think that should be pushed along in this country.
Yeah, it's definitely food for thought there. It actually ties up to a lot of probably similar thoughts to James and I have. But I really appreciate you having the time to come on today and talk in depth about your pathway from playing to coaching. And I think this is one that will really, really interest our target audience. And James, is there anything else that you want to ask or add on to at the end of that? Or is your notepad full as well?
Yeah, that's it. I'm going to listen back to this one, because as you say, this is, you know, for coaches, like us, this is what we want to hear, is that there's other people out there that are ambitious for their clubs, for themselves, for their players, and actually not to be afraid of pushing boundaries and being more professional. And, you know, if a player wants to be in that environment, bring them in. You know, and let them push themselves and let them make the decisions how far they want to go with it. So just absolutely fascinating. I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Yeah. If there's one thing that if people might take away from this, is that you can, as a coach, you got to be more. You have to have you have to be driven to do it. There's no point being, excuse the term, half hours to do it. You know, you have to be driven to get there. But if you also have to have the right environment and the right people around you, i.e. players and other staff members that have the same desire and same work ethic and same everything to improve the place you're working. And if you're talking about as a club, it has to come from the chairman, it has to come from the top man, right down to the under 9 coach, and they all have to have the same desire and development that they make the club a better place.
Brilliant. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.